I want to tell you a little something about the college football playoff that you need to know. Also, the basketball Vols on the floor. But let's start with reacting to the college football playoff. It is time for four downs. But first, our friend Cooper Mays is going to tell you what to do.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Yes, that's what people need to do, Coop, and they certainly will. So go ahead and smash that like button. We greatly appreciate that. Four downs brought to you by our friends at Tennessee Cider Company.
Four downs. Four questions. Four answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
Four
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Tennessee number 17 after being number 1 last year in the very first college football playoff committee show. And we'll discuss if they got it right from the top on down to the Vols and if the Vols have a path. It's brought to you by Tennessee Cider Company, the original hard cider of the Smoky Mountains. Use the promo code HAT, that's HAT, to receive some free swag with your cider order, available most anywhere in the U.S., tncidercompany.com, or just go below and you can see the link. Use the promo code HAT. Support our sponsors. That's why we are here. So let's get to it, Coop. We can't keep track of downs without you. What do you got?
Coop here. First down.
All right, so the college football playoff, let's start with the top down, and then I'll ask you specifically about the Vols. Did they get it right at the top? I think Georgia and Michigan are the two best teams in college football right now, and I would take Georgia just slightly over them, but that's not the way it shaked out. Nobody called me. So here's the way the rankings did shake out. It was Ohio State number 1, Georgia number 2, Michigan number 3, Florida State number 4, Washington 5, Oregon 6. Did they get it right? That's first down, Caleb.
No, they did not. And the reason I say they did not is college football playoff rankings should not have power rankings as a factor. They shouldn't factor in who Vegas would favor on the field. I don't care what Nick Saban says. They should only look at your resume. And that's always been my point. Right now, to this point, do I think Georgia and Michigan are the two best teams in football too? I do. Do I think they have the two best resumes? No. I think I'm fine with Ohio State being number 1. I would have had Washington at number 1, though. I think Washington or Florida State have the two best resumes. And I think, but Washington, Florida State, and Ohio State are interchangeable of 1, 2, and 3. Georgia and Michigan, one of them has to play somebody beyond like the school for the blind before I can put them at number in the top 4, because they have had the worst schedules of any top 5 playoff team in history to this point. And I would have Oregon at number 4 ahead of Georgia and Michigan with 1 loss.
All right. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Vols at 17, too high, too low.
Right now, it's, you know what? It's too low. I think they should be ahead of Notre Dame, quite honestly.
Agreed.
And so I think they should be at number 16.
All right. What down we got, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Okay. So I know you want to touch base on this. And I know that you've talked about this earlier. Do the Vols have a path to making the college football playoff, and what has to happen?
Yes, they absolutely have a path. So let me just say this point real quick. Based on games that have to be played, first, Tennessee has to win out. That's assumed. If Tennessee wins out,
that means beating Georgia.
Right, that means beating Georgia. So if Tennessee wins out, based on games that have to be played that are coming up, it will be impossible for Tennessee, if no upsets happen, it would be impossible for Tennessee to finish below 8th. Okay, so that's all. That's assuming no upsets happen. Now, first step is somehow backing their way into the SEC title game, because they're not going to go to the playoff as a 2-loss team who didn't win their conference. So they have to somehow win the SEC, which means if you're Tennessee, you want Missouri to beat Georgia this week. You want Georgia to beat Ole Miss next week because you want that 1-loss Ole Miss team to have 2 losses. You want to beat Georgia, and then you want to play Alabama in a rematch. And the reason you want Alabama in a rematch is if Alabama loses to LSU and you go beat LSU in the SEC title, well, you won the SEC, but you and Alabama both have 2 losses and Alabama beat you. The playoff committee will look at that. So The rooting interest for Tennessee in the SEC is Missouri beat Georgia, LSU beat Florida, Alabama beat LSU, Georgia beat Ole Miss, Tennessee beat Georgia, and then Tennessee beat Alabama in the SEC title game. Now, if that happens, they'll be at number 7, assuming there are no upsets. But again, I think they would. There will be, and I think they would leapfrog Notre Dame, and which would put them at number 6. And I also think they would. That would put them at number 6, really knocking on the door. And Washington or Oregon, one of them is going to fall somewhere.
Okay, let me ask you this, because these are human individuals, and it leads us to 4th down, Coop.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
All right. Is Tennessee appealing? Last year, they were obviously appealing. And had it come down to 2 teams that were very close, let's say for that 4th spot, okay, hypothetical time, I believe that Tennessee, with their style of play, would have won that battle and been in the playoff if there were 2 teams that were incredibly close. You're not supposed to factor that in. You should factor in resume. I agree with you, Caleb. Even the eye test, which I use far too often, is probably not the best way to go. But the bottom line is Tennessee is not as sexy this year as they were. So if they did all of that and they're teetering between 4 and 5, would you think that would factor in? Because I honestly think it would. I think that Tennessee was super sexy last year, and they even had a hooker at quarterback. And they also were a good story. I don't think they're as good of a story this year, even if they were to get to that point. Your thoughts on how appealing the Vols are for what is, let's remember, a TV show, okay? This is entertainment. They want the most appealing teams out there. If it were close between 4 and 5, I don't think the Vols would have the same edge that they would have last year. You agree or disagree?
I actually disagree. I think they have more edge this year. And the
why?
reason, because I think this committee, a lot of these guys are older guys on the committee who still think football should be about, who have the Gary Danielson approach to football, who think it should be about defense and toughness and running the ball and all of that good stuff. You know, former football people used to call it in the 90s. The ones that would think your head coach should be Jeremy Pruitt and you use 3 tight ends on the field. I think that's what a lot of this committee's made up of. And we're seeing that because Dave, who's number 1? Who's number 1 in the poll? Ohio State. Have you seen Ohio State this year? It's not your typical Ohio State offense with Kyle McCord. They're not a sexy team this year at all.
Well, no, it's not. And I don't understand the love affair with Ohio State. I'll just go ahead and tell you that.
They're loaded with talent. They have the most talent in the NFL and college football this year.
Yeah, but I'm not talking specifically about this year, but it seems like they always get the benefit of the doubt. Do they not?
I mean, I can't say they have. I feel like they've usually earned it. I mean, when Tennessee played for the national title in '98, they didn't get the benefit of the doubt. I mean, they went to Florida State for the number 2 spot when Ohio State also had a loss, and Florida State got the nod. I mean, again, now what you're saying with Ohio State, I feel that was Bobby Bowden in Florida State. Bobby Bowden always got the benefit of the doubt when he was at Florida State. But
if you're going to give the benefit of the doubt to somebody, you should give it to Georgia. They had 10 picks in the 2023 NFL draft. Alabama had 10 picks. If you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, they're pretty much the Georgia Bulldogs. Michigan was next with 9 picks. TCU third with 8. To me, if you're giving somebody the benefit of the doubt and you're going to like somebody when you really don't have enough of a test subject, I guess is the word I'm looking for. You don't have enough history to really judge these 2 teams, and we will by the end of November. But why wouldn't you go with the team that annually is more talented? I see what you're saying about Ohio State this year, but I will go ahead and bet you that over the next 3 years that Georgia will have more players drafted than Ohio State.
Well, because look, I think Georgia could beat Ohio State this year. I think right now, though, you're basing it off resume. I don't think it's close. Ohio State's resume is way better. Georgia should not be a top 5 team in the playoff right now. Okay, I'm sorry, but like Georgia and Michigan have played air so far this year. I think James Madison has played a tougher schedule than Georgia. James Madison's undefeated record is more impressive than Georgia's record right now. So I think
Yeah, but we have to use some common sense, don't we?
I think you use common sense by putting Georgia at 5 and saying when they beat somebody worth their salt, which would be this weekend when they play Missouri. All right, I'll move you up when you play Missouri. Until then, I got one loss Oregon ahead of them, and I got Michigan behind Georgia. I got Michigan at number 6, Georgia at number 5, Michigan at number 6, because neither of those teams have played anybody, and I think resume matters. That doesn't. These rankings aren't about where you think it's going to end. They should be based on what you've done to this point. Full stop.
Philosophically, I'm more of an eye test guy, and I understand where you're coming from. Eye test doesn't get you through a court case. It doesn't win you an election. It doesn't do a lot of things in life. But I am a little bit more of an eye test guy.
Dave, eye test is why Florida State was favored over Tennessee in the '98 national title game. And look what happened.
Yeah, I thought that was just more about what they had done lately, tradition.
No, it was about people looked at Tennessee and was like, well, they struggled to put away Mississippi State. They struggled to beat Arkansas. They looked a little rough at November. And they said, you know what? Florida State is playing better in November. Eye test, by the way, here's the biggest piece of history. 2006. Do you remember the Florida, Michigan, Ohio State debate when Ohio State beat Michigan and everybody thought Michigan should play Florida in a rematch or Ohio State in a rematch, and Florida got the nod for Urban Meyer's first national title? Everybody said Florida has been struggling to win all these games, and Michigan blew out everybody and only lost to Ohio State by 3. They passed the eye test. But what happened? Florida goes to the national title game and beats Ohio State 41-14. And I mean, eye test is a tiebreaker. It should not outdo schedule strength at all. Schedule strength matters to me more than eye test by a large margin.
Okay. I can roll with that.